Oh, hello. Welcome to another Tabletop Impulse video. Bit of a different one today. We're going to talk about why Warhammer is so important to my mental health, and I'm also going to do some trash talking about computer games, so stick around for that so you can become angry in the comments section. These skeletons here are really important to me. These skeletons are really important to me because these are the first thing I painted after I came out of hospital. So those of you that don't know, in January of 2021, I got really ill with COVID. I'm really ill. It gives you kind of a new perspective on things. You know, I was in intensive care, I saw people die, yada yada yada. These was the first bit of hobby that I did when I got out of hospital. We'll talk more about that in a minute. If you haven't guessed from that kind of maudlin intro, this video is going to be a bit different, a bit deep. I do promise it ties into Warhammer. Sometimes it gets a bit off-piste. It's probably going to run quite long. If this isn't what you want right now, give it a skip. You know, it's fine. There's going to be more regular Kill Team content soon. Got my Euclidean Star Striders, or half of them, painted up. I've got about 2.5 more to get finished, and then I'm going to have some games in with them. So you can look forward to some more Kill Team content very soon. Maybe even tomorrow. So if this isn't what you're in the mood for right now, do give it a skip, or just give it a pause and come back to it later. I did say that it was going to go places. So the first thing I want to touch on is the idea of Memento Mori. So this is from Stoic philosophy. It's basically the idea that you should always remember that you die. You know, and so you should always be asking yourself, is this how you want to spend your time? Marcus Aurelius said, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think, which I think is something that's always worth bearing in mind. I like that quote better. He's also got a quote which is essentially live each day as if it could be your last, which I think is often misinterpreted, perhaps willfully, as to live as if there were no consequences, and then obviously you will be alive the next day and there will be consequences and you'll be ill or go to prison or have lost all your money or whatever it is, and that's not really what I'm talking about, and it's not what Marcus Aurelius was talking about either, but I guess people like to take that one quote out of context and then debunk it, which is a thing. It's more about the idea of just remembering that you have a finite span of time, and therefore, and everybody has the same finite span of time as you, and you don't know when that end will come. It could be in 30 years, it could be tomorrow. And that's not supposed to be a depressing thought. I guess it can come off that way, but what it's supposed to be, first of all, it focuses you in on making sure you're not wasting the time that you have and that you're enjoying each moment of your life and living in the moment and being kind of present in every moment. And I think it also keeps you humble when things go really well. And I think it keeps you kind of cheerful and upbeat when things are not going so well. Because, you know, to take another famous quote from I think originally a Persian quote, this too shall pass, you know, it's the idea that actually, in the grand scheme of things, nothing matters particularly much, so you don't need to dwell on stresses, anxieties, and negative things either. But for the purpose of this video, we're just going to take it at the element which is just to think about the fact that you've got a finite span of time, and to think about how you're using your time and how you're choosing to use your time. And tied in with that, I've got another quote from a guy called Tim Urban, who has a blog called Wait But Why, which I'm a big fan of. Not that I agree with everything he says and thinks, but he wrote in one of his blogs, most people sleep for about 7 or 8 hours a night. This leaves 16 or 17 hours awake each day, or about 1,000 minutes. If you think about those 1,000 minutes as 100 10-minute blocks, that's what you wake up with each day. That's kind of a gift that you have, and you should try and think about how you're going to use those 10-minute blocks as productively, or as joyfully, or as usefully, however you want to conceive of it, as possible. I promise this ties back into Warhammer. Another thing that we need to talk about, kind of to establish the framework of what I'm trying to say, is the 888 rule, which is a thing that comes from the labour rights movement, where they were talking about you know, not living to work, basically. Now, work's very important, I think. I agree with Max Aurelius. People are basically made to work. If your work it is a third of your day, ideally, and it should be something that fulfills you and that you feel is productive and contributing to society. For some people, I'm sure work is something that they endure, so that they can live have the other 8 hours of time for doing the things that they want to do. But in an ideal world, those 8 hours of work are not. It's not dead time. It's maybe not as enjoyable as the other third, right? But it should be. It should be beneficial to you, but not. It shouldn't come to totally dominate your life. I'm very lucky. I'm a teacher. I have a job that's extremely fulfilling. Although along with that, there are a lot of teachers that suffer from burnout because they work for more than 8 hours a day. They do. It's one of those things where you could spend your entire life planning lessons that were amazing and interactive and brilliant, and then eventually your job becomes your job and your hobby and your social life, and it becomes your entire lifestyle. You do meet lifestyle teachers, and some of them own it, and some of them burn out totally, right? So I try and stick to the 8-8-8 rule. I also think 8 hours of sleep is really important. I function best on 8 hours of sleep, which I haven't had today, but I always aim for 8 hours of sleep. It's an aspirational target, let's call it that. I also always tell my students not to think about school for more than 8 hours a day, because I think these days, there's a side point where we push kids a lot. Kids 12, 13, 14 to really be doing a lot of extra work at home, revision and stuff. And actually, yeah, they should do some, sure, but they really shouldn't be thinking about their schooling for more than 8 hours every day. So this is vaguely what I aim for, and I promise we're going to Warhammer. Next slide, right? This is what I aim for on a work day, anyway. So green is the time that I'm asleep. So I try to go to bed at 10, I get up at 6. And then I've got work blocked out in dark blue, so I'm going to count work as being from 8 o'clock, which is about when I leave the house, to 5 o'clock, which is about when I get back in. Now, I'm already planning to fail because that's 9 hours. Such is life. I guess there's lunch in there, and I spend some time at work talking to Zimbad and socialising and not necessarily doing full-on work for those full 9 hours, but those are the 9 hours that I'm out the house doing my job. If you live further away from your workplace, then that's going to take up more of your time. People don't factor that in, but then you have to find ways. If your commute's really long, you have to find ways of making that your time, listen to audiobooks or whatever that you want to do. Obviously, you can't play Warhammer and drive a car. Maybe you can try and find a way around that, I don't know. Sometimes you have to work late, right? Sometimes things don't go according to plan. Sometimes I have to take loads of work home to do marking. So 3 or 4 times a year we have mock exams. The exams have to get marked. There's not enough hours in the day to do it. It needs to be done, so it gets done. There's like parents' evenings and prize givings and things like that, where work kind of does bleed out of its lane a little bit. Obviously, if you work pro rata, so you're getting paid an hourly wage, then your situation is different. If you're salaried, then obviously sometimes there's extra work that has to be done, and it has to get done, and that's part of the job. But at least I'm not an English teacher. I teach computer science, which is pretty light when it comes to the amount of actual marking of books on a weekly basis that you have to do. If I was an English teacher and having to mark everything for content and for grammar all the time, that would be a lot of work. So then we got these 2 hours in the morning, 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. They're sort of free time and sort of not. They're getting up, getting washed, getting dressed, having breakfast, reading the internet, that sort of thing. They're my time, but they're not my time, So that basically leaves me with these 5 hours here, right? Now, some days I will say, like today, I get up too early, just as a side point. I do get up too early sometimes. Today, I woke up at 3 a.m. I just didn't want to. I woke, and I was the most awake a person can be at 3 a.m. So my top tip when that happens is just to get up and own it and treat it like bonus gifted time that you wouldn't have otherwise had, and turn it from a negative into a positive by doing, this is why I'm making this video, by doing something extra and productive. And yes, you will have to pay for it later, and yes, I'll probably struggle to stay up till 10 o'clock. I will really try to stay up till 10 o'clock, because that's the trick. The trick is to try and keep on the schedule. But treat it as a gift, try and turn it into a positive, try and do something productive, and try still to go to bed at the normal time. So this leaves you with 5, not 8, but 5 hours in the evening. You know, from 5 till 10. Obviously, family mealtime, household jobs, and other bits and pieces go in that space. But ideally, that's where the Warhammer lives, right? That's where the Warhammering and the YouTubing and this sort of stuff gets to live. Obviously, there are weekends and holidays. What's prompted this video is I've just had a week's holiday, it's half term, and I've fundamentally wasted that week. And we'll get on to how and why that happens. I believe that I'm happiest when I get to stick to this schedule. Even on a holiday, if I can stick to this schedule, and then instead of going to work, that is when family time happens. You know, I had a really good, the best day during the holiday was in the middle of the day. We carved pumpkins for Halloween, and we did stuff like that, and as a whole family, or watching going to the cinema, or going to town, something like that. I'm happiest on the days when we do something as a family in that middle bit, right? And then the evening is me time still. That's what I like to do, but I lack self-discipline. So finally, we're going to talk about Warhammer. So I told you we would eventually talk about Warhammer. Games Workshop have this slogan which is slightly sinister: more Warhammer, more often, which I always read in the James Workshop voice, right? More Warhammer, more often, right? It's obviously they want your money, and I'm talking about Warhammer. Tabletop war games. I'm using Warhammer like a generous trademark. I mainly do Games Workshop stuff, Warhammer stuff, but I've got some Star Wars Legion and things as well. We're talking about the whole gamut, right? I like to fill that free time that I have with Warhammer, playing Warhammer, painting Warhammer, or making YouTube videos about Warhammer, because I enjoy it, and that's fine, but that's not the only reason. And to be honest, it doesn't feel like because I enjoy it is the main reason. It's because I feel like I have to produce something of value, or become more skilled at something with time. Like, that's what makes me happy, feeling that I've done something that's useful. Now, social time is a bit different. Like, social time is never wasted time. If you go out to the pub, or if you're spending time with your family, or if you're going to play a game of Warhammer, even though maybe you don't actually play the game, you just chat for a bit, that is kind of additional and separate to what I'm talking about. I'm talking really about the time where you spend on your own. I find that having a hobby to do in that time really helps. Now, look, it doesn't have to be Warhammer. I'm a Warhammer YouTube channel. Obviously, I'm obsessed with Warhammer. I've got shelves and shelves of the stuff behind me. It could be fishing, or cooking, or pottery, or golf, or writing fiction. But for me, it's tabletop war games. That's my thing that I do that brings me joy, calm, and a sense of fulfillment. And I know that sounds like a lot to kind of pile on a thing that's fundamentally just a way of extracting money from you. But when I don't get my Warhammer fix, I feel like less of a person. Like that is just undisputably true. I feel like I get kind of depressed, like I haven't really done anything apart from, you know, work stuff or whatever. And I just think it's really important to have a hobby. And everybody should have a hobby and actually engage with that hobby, and not just... I know there will be people that watch this and their hobby is basically watching YouTube videos about Warhammer on the internet. I would urge you to honestly close the video, don't watch to the end. Just pick up a paintbrush and pick up a piece of plastic that you're meaning to build or do something with, and just get on with it. Just start and then see where it takes you. But we have to... We made a lot of statements, so we have to sort of problematize them a little bit. And I found this picture on the internet. I've got no idea where it's from or who drew it or what it's about, but it really wonderfully sums up how I feel. Sometimes Warhammer is hard work, right? And to scratch the itch that I talked about on the previous slide, where it leaves you feeling fulfilled and completed and all these things, it has to be hard work. It has to feel like there's an element of doing the thing, because if you didn't have to work at doing the thing, you wouldn't feel like you'd done a thing. But sometimes you feel ill, or you have disturbed sleep, or you just sort of can't bring yourself to play the Warhammer. So, as you guys know, we have a new baby, and she's beautiful and lovely and amazing. And here's a little picture down here. Now, she got her first cold this week, and there is no lack of sleep, like the lack of sleep where you're just kind of worried about your baby, listening to her struggling to breathe. And she only had a blocked nose. Like, it wasn't life-threatening, it wasn't a huge issue, but and that wiped out, honestly, like two or 3 days. But then I made it worse for myself. Like, this stuff happens, bad days happen, the point of the video is not to beat yourself up about the legitimate bad days, right, where you can't be productive at all and you have to just go home and veg out. That's not a problem. The problem that we're trying to get onto, I guess, is where that spirals then more than it needs to. You know, you have you one or two kind of bad days where there's a reason for them, and then you end up having a whole week of bad days. That's what I want to talk about a bit more. But you don't want to force your hobby, because it's not work. And I'll talk more about that later as well, because sometimes hobbies can become work, and that's really problematic as well. Your hobby shouldn't be work. You shouldn't need to force it. You shouldn't want to force it. Sometimes a little oomph to get started, and just like, I'm just gonna like glue a guy together and see if it grabs me out of my little kind of funk that I'm in. But don't force it for more than about 20 minutes. Maybe force yourself 20 minutes and see if you get into the flow. That can be reasonable. But you shouldn't be like, no, we've got a Warhammer, so then 3 hours of making yourself miserable. I think it's because you have pride in your work. Like, whatever you're doing, whether you're painting or playing Warhammer, whether you're learning a musical instrument or you know, drawing or whatever you're doing, you have pride in your work. You don't want to do a bad job because you're half awake. So what do you do in that situation where you're not at work, you're not asleep, but you kind of lack the mental capacity to do the hobby, to do the thing? I mean, that's when this stuff comes in. A friend of mine calls things mental bubblegum, right? It doesn't fill you up, but it stops you from just kind of looking at the wall. And on a good day, this is stuff like video games or television shows. On a bad day, it ends up being Facebook Reels, right? Like, I did not understand TikTok. I didn't visit TikTok, and then Facebook basically invented TikTok for white men in their 30s, and then obviously people older than that. But if you're cool, just imagine I said TikTok, or substitute whatever social media it is that your age group and demographic actually uses. For me, that's Facebook Reels. My God, like, if you want to feel awful about yourself, spend like an hour looking at Facebook Reels, and that's like it distilled. If you've got a productive hobby where you're creating something or socializing or doing something at one end of the scale, and then if you've got just watching Facebook Reels, that's the other end of the scale, and then everything else we can kind of plot in between. There's nothing wrong potentially with watching TV, especially if you watch it socially. If what you do with your significant other or your friends or whatever it is that you sit and you watch you know, a certain TV show that's on every week or whatever, and then maybe, especially, you talk about it afterwards, you engage with it online, you do things. That can be a hobby. Like, your hobby can be watching TV, that's fine, especially if it's got those social elements. And your hobby can be playing video games as well. I personally have hang-ups around video games. I want to talk about video games now. I love video games. Video games don't love me. So I really enjoy them. I really enjoy video games, especially epic RPGs. So here, Skyrim, World of Warcraft, Elden Ring, Dragon Age, Mass Effect. I love these games. Love all these games a lot. But they will suck up your time like nothing else I've found on this earth. Right? You will start playing one of these games and you will just there's never a stopping point. There's not like some games you complete a level or you do a thing or you reach a goal and it's like, oh, do you want to do another match, or do you want to do the next round, or do you want to do the next thing? With these kinds of games, and I love them dearly, but there's not really an end. I find that playing video games, first of all, it's easy to, if you're feeling ill or under the weather or tired for perfectly legitimate reasons, you don't want to beat yourself up and you want to have a nice time and a nice day, a video game is it's the perfect panacea to your problem of, I am too, you know, tuckered out to do anything, to do the Warhammer thing or to do anything else that might be actually really fulfilling. I'll play some video games, right? That will keep me happy and entertained, and that's fine. But I always find that they pull me. I end up staying up much later. I end up getting less like that. I have played Skyrim a lot of days this half-term holiday, which is basically what's probably most of this video. I've played Skyrim a lot. I have overall, over my lifetime, I've played it for over 900 hours, which is over a month of just playing Skyrim. Now that's slightly inflated because I do kind of pause it. Especially this week, I've paused it. I've been holding my daughter and doing things and this, that, and the other, and unpause it and play it some more. But I've played a lot of Skyrim this week, and some of that was justified, and then and some of that time I just perpetuate the cycle by staying up far too late. There have definitely been nights where I've gone to bed at 3 a.m, 4 a.m, and the only reason I've gone to bed, to be perfectly honest, is because I've gone, well, if I'm still here at 6 o'clock when my wife gets up, right, she will have a go at me. If I lived on my own, like legitimately, if there was nobody looking at me, I think I could easily play Skyrim for 20 hours. Do you know what I mean? Before I absolutely completely conked out of overtiredness, and I get totally around the clock and be totally awake at random times and be totally out of sync with reality. I know I'm not the only one with that problem, but it, definitely with these kind of games, just very hard to stop a play session, right? Excuse me. And those marathon sessions then leave you kind of depressed. Like, you know, it's depressing. If you get up and you play a video game and you have lunch and you play a video game and you have tea and you play a video game and you go to bed, even if that was punctuated by, you know, conversations and bits of chores and bits and pieces of that, but if that was the only thing you did for fun that whole day, that just leaves me feeling kind of like, what? And I think it's because, excuse me, sorry, grown as a content creator, I've discovered the pause button in OBS for when I need to drink because my throat is really itchy. I think it's because I just don't get a sense of accomplishment from these things. Like, there's no thing at the end of it. Apart from World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft is a different problem. There's a whole slide coming about World of Warcraft. Just park that for a minute. But for the single player games, it's an accomplishment. But I just don't, like, if you actually, I've never actually finished Elden Ring, right? If you finish Elden Ring, that is an accomplishment, because that game is hard. But I don't feel that way. I suppose the thing is to view video games as more like watching a film or reading a book, right? You don't accomplish anything when you read a book, but you, in theory, enjoy the doing and the discovering of the story, and then you're like, oh, that was very nice. But the thing is, I can't read for pleasure anymore. I listen to audiobooks when I'm painting or doing something else, but I can't just sit. The only last time I finished an actual paper book was because I had to sit, when I was on my paternity leave and picking up my stepson from school. To get a decent space near the school, I would have to arrive like 45 minutes before the time to pick up. So I brought a book in the car. Books are great for that kind of thing, hospital waiting rooms. But sitting in my house and reading a book, not done that in years. Years and years and years. TV is a bit different. Again, it's a social thing. Very rarely do I sit on my own and watch TV anymore. I'll sit with my wife and watch TV, and then we talk about it a little bit, and that's different. That's like a shared experience thing. That's fine, but just as a solitary activity, not really. I used to like shooters and strategy games as well. They're not as problematic, I guess, because they have, like, you play, if you play Modern Warfare or something, you play a round, and then the round finishes, and then you've got a point where you go, well, do I want another one, or do I want to go, you know. And I'm looking forward to Darktide, the ongoing 40k game, which I plan on pre-ordering. I may even do a little bit of content for it on the channel. I'm hoping that I get away with that, because you go in, you play around for, you know, you go on a mission with your 3 friends, you do, then you decide, do we want to do another one, or do I want to do something else? And maybe that's achievable with my mindset, but these kind of games, I don't know, and I don't want to just say, oh, they're not for me, because I love them. They just don't love me back. We'll talk about World of Warcraft. So, I don't even know how many. I could log in and do /played and all that, but I'd have to install World of Warcraft again, which would be a bad thing. So World of Warcraft, like, not exaggerating to say I nearly failed my degree, my undergraduate degree, because of World of Warcraft. I've lost a very close friend because of World of Warcraft. Like, World of Warcraft is bizarre. It absolutely feels like an accomplishment. It's designed to tick those boxes, to feel like you're accomplishing things. And it is an amazing game and it's a lot of fun, but it absolutely kind of becomes if you play a lot of World of Warcraft, it becomes an all-consuming lifestyle, right? It's your thing that you talk about, do, socialise in. Yes. And if you play for long enough and you sort of get through all the kind of... And I love, some of my fondest memories are levelling in World of Warcraft, like playing through it with my wife, my best friend, playing through and doing various bits and pieces. But then you get to the point where you've kind of got this character to a certain point, and then to progress further and to get better gear and continue that character's story, you have to cooperate with a team of 40 or 25 or 10 people, depending on the era of World of Warcraft that you're playing. And I struggle to maintain that many personal relationships. Like, I have 23 Facebook friends, and that includes my mother-in-law. I think I tend to go. I go all in. If I'm your friend, then especially this is going to be confusing for anybody that's on my Facebook page, just watching this, and be like, oh well, I'm kind of fond of that guy. Like, I love all of my Facebook friends, absolutely, like all 20 odd of them, right? But I tend to kind of go all in on friendship. I struggle to maintain the kind of arm's length friendships that a lot of people have. So then when I suddenly have to find 25 people that want to log in on a Thursday at 4 PM and do a thing for 4 hours, like, struggle to kind of get along with those people for the full length of time. I do struggle with that, and then I feel betrayed and confused. And there's just so much social weirdness and politics and people that are... I'm one of these people that tries to... I guess it's the teacher in me, right? I try to take control of a group situation and, smooth things out. And then when I can't do that, I find it very frustrating, like people having problems with other people and all this sort of thing. And honestly, it's just a nightmare. And then when your thing that you're doing, to go back to the point of the video, if this is your Warhammer, if this is the thing that you're doing for your mental health and your mental hygiene that brings you joy and gives you that sense of fulfillment from an extra thing that's outside of work and family, that third place that's so important, and then suddenly it's contingent on 39 other people getting along with each other and behaving like rational human beings and being kind and being reasonable, and then they don't do it. Like, that's tough, because then you don't have your... Because then you're in work mode. Because then I love my job, but there are absolutely members of staff that I don't get on with. And because you're working together and doing a thing, you're like, well, okay, I'll suppress that and try and be diplomatic and all the rest of it. And then suddenly you're doing that in the thing that's supposed to be your kind of decompression and fun time. And then it becomes a second job, because suddenly it's a thing that you're obligated to do at a certain time with people who, most of them you probably wouldn't choose to socialise with otherwise. And it's just difficult. Really difficult. So what's the point of this video? If there can be said to be a point, what is it? I've been talking for nearly half an hour. Paint more Warhammer. Play more Warhammer. Create content if that's your thing. You'll feel better. That's basically the short version of what I'm trying to get at. You'll feel better. And if you're somehow watching this and you have no interest in playing Warhammer, like, how have you got through half an hour of possibly the worst video on a mediocre Warhammer related channel if you don't... But if you don't like Warhammer, do the thing that you like doing. Go hiking, or knit a jumper, or bake a cake. Like, whatever that thing is. And if you don't have that thing in your life, then you need to find something. Try stuff. I would suggest going to your local games workshop and getting a free Warhammer model and building and painting it and see if it grabs you. But find a hobby, a thing that you can do, that you can put in that 8 hours of your day when you shouldn't be sleeping or working or thinking about work, and do it. But I only have questions. What do you do when you're in that slug mode, when you have a day where you're like, I just can't engage with things that bring me joy because I'm too tired or too ill or too kind of upset about something else or depressed about something else? And it's like, the only way to get better is to do the thing, but you also don't want to force yourself to do the thing. So if you try the thing for 20 minutes, see if it grabs you, that's fine. But then if it doesn't grab you, I don't know. And the thing is, I don't want to write off video games. I want to lead a rich and varied life where I can do multiple different things and not just do one thing and I have to write off all the other things. Because I like video games, I just don't like how they make me feel. So what strategies can one have that square that circle? I don't know the answer. Final thoughts. If you watch this whole long ramble thing, be sure to leave a comment with the word penguin in, and then I will know which 4 people or 3 people have actually watched this entire kind of ill-advised and rambly video. Happy Halloween, I want to say, because it is Halloween today. I think this is kind of, in a way, apt for Halloween, because I feel like Halloween has kind of roots in the medieval the Dance Macabre thing, and it's kind of tied in with the Memento Mori concept. I realise now it's about dressing up and eating too much chocolate, but basically every holiday has devolved into dressing up and eating too much chocolate. I mean, you know, Christmas is about dressing up and eating too much chocolate, and Easter is about dressing up and eating too much chocolate. Halloween is the most about dressing up and maybe not the most about chocolate, but like I feel like every holiday has devolved into those two things. But if there is a meaning behind Halloween somewhere, it probably along one tradition it has something to do with the idea of Memento Mori, so take that for what it's worth. I did say this. I complained once to my wife. I said that people don't. I always try and give people really good advice. I never seem to receive very much advice. I said to me, some people don't like to give advice. They think it's rude or condescending or something else. So, in case that's a thing, explicitly, advice is welcome. Like, this is not me saying you must craft me some advice, please. But if you have advice, if you're like, oh, this stupid man just needs to do this thing, then write that, because that's helping, surely. Like, why people would ever hold back giving advice is a mystery to me. More normal content is on the way this week. I promise. This has been a weird aberration because I woke up in a very funny mood, far too tired after a weird week. I'm pretty sure the demographic circles don't align. If you've watched this video to this point and you're not subscribed to the channel, then you should subscribe to the channel, because we are 59 subscribers until we have 1,000 subscribers, which is a very small number and a very large number. And I would really like to get to 1,000 subs before the end of the calendar year. And with your help, we can make it happen. So I hope that you've enjoyed that video somehow. I hope you have a great day, and cheerio, folks.